Since I was young, I really loved trading card games. I loved watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And when I got older and got into Magic the Gathering, I was fully immersed in it. When I was about 12 or 13, I would watch Future Card Buddy fight into the ground and get mad when my town didn't have packs. Shocker. And as I got older, eventually watching Card Fight Vanguard, just the idea of these tactical games with creatures really ignited something in me. And while I would like to act like it's solely enjoyment, I think it's a lot deeper than that. I always was drawn to the idea of a big friendship and bonding, and I know that sounds ironic, like, oh, big fan of human interaction. But I always had this draw to the idea of like Pokemon, where you have a best friend of Bakugan, where it's like, oh, this is my buddy, and Buddy Fight, where you're like, this is my guy. I really always thought that was really cool, and even Vanguard with the Avatar, I thought that was something that I was always drawn to. And when you're playing, for instance, Dungeons and Dragons, you can sit down and visualize these entire battles, and that didn't stop with Dungeons and Dragons with me. I kept doing that all the way through my card game tournaments and stuff like that. These monsters were my friends. These spells I had learned. It caused me to get really immersed into it and allow me to start writing at a young age too. These stories of these fights and these creatures that I would get involved with. It was something that really burned this passion in me. I never really cared about net decking. I never really cared. I won some tournaments. But I never did it with, maybe there was a deck that I was really proud of building, but I always, for instance, with Yu-Gi-Oh, I always kept Jerry Beans Man in there, just cause. And if I drew him, I was like, there he is, and I'm going to put him on the battlefield and he's going to die in a turn, and it doesn't really matter, but he's there. It was something I really enjoyed. And that always, like I said, ignited a spark in me to want to create. And so when I was 12, me and a buddy of mine wanted to make a video game, and we titled it Realms of Chaos, and we had this whole like storyboard idea. We started programming and coding and trying the best that we could at 12 on an HP laptop with Unity 3D, but it just didn't. What did you think was going to happen? It collapsed in on itself, and it never became anything. But the idea of Realms of Chaos always excited me, and it was something that I attached a lot of my creations to. So if I drew out some knight or some bard or a funny card idea or something, it was always under the umbrella term of Realms of Chaos. A couple of weeks after that, maybe about a year actually, I remember I was sitting in my room and didn't want to be limited by my computer anymore. I didn't want to be limited by my lack of knowledge or my youth or anything. I knew that I could use my hands, and I had paper and an imagination. So I sat down and I drew out the first Realms of Chaos card, which was a knight, I believe. It's somewhere. I never got rid of it. I have a briefcase of everything, which maybe I'll go through someday on here. But I never got rid of it, and I immediately ran and showed my dad and was like, look, man, I'm making a trading card game. He was like, oh, it's cool. I had a 13, 12-year-old kid showing you his trading card game he's making. And this idea really always got me excited, but I would always make these cards without any idea of where the game was going, what mechanics I wanted. Maybe I was playing in a tournament and was like, oh, that's a cool mechanic and I think it could work in my game. You're really stealing ideas in the beginning. And I would continue to do that for years. I kept a sketchbook that has kept all of my ideas in it, and still to this day, which I'll get into. Anytime I was sitting in class and an idea of a monster, I would sketch a monster or creature or come up with like, oh, that'd be cool. I always did it in class, of course. I would sketch it down in this sketchbook, and I kept that for a long time. As years went on, I would be in the 7th or 8th grade, and I would go through test cycles. I wanted the card game to look a certain way, and then it wouldn't. I was making it in like Word document and then cutting them out and like drawing them on paper and emailing to. It was very, very complex for what I ended up doing long term. But I was proud of that, and I've kept all this stuff. Let me stress that too. I've kept everything because it is something that it's always been a great outlet for my creativity with these creatures and these stories that I made as a kid. And I went on a break with the game for a long time. I started playing Magic pretty competitively in my local scene around 16, and did that up until I was probably 18. Then I started playing Pokemon because it was a lot more laid back. Magic can get pretty intense, as you know. I think my favorite was always Buddy Fight or Vanguard, but there was no play group. I've played Buddy Fight twice, loved it, and played Vanguard in one tournament, and loved it. But it wasn't until my sophomore year of college that I really took it seriously. So at that time, I was going through a dark patch. I'm an athlete at the university I attend, and I was experiencing my first ever serious injury that was It ended up ending that year. I run track, and I ended up running one more meet, but it pretty much put me on the back burner. I was going through a pretty rough breakup at that time too, and it felt like the world was stacked against me, but I wanted to persevere. And around the springtime is when I started being like, oh man, because that was when I played Magic a whole lot, and I went to Thursday night drafts, and I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! It was usually around the springtime, so I was getting nostalgic, we'll say. So I started looking at these cards, and then I went home and grabbed my cards, wanted to see if there was a local tournament, or like at my college I could join a club, which I ended up doing, but it just didn't pan out. And then I found the Realms of Chaos cards and was like, I want to work on this. And because of the injury, I found myself having to make up for a good 3 to 5 hours out of my day where I was a multi, so I wasn't throwing, I wasn't running, I wasn't weightlifting, I wasn't doing any of that. And so I was having to make up for that time. And there's a lot of free time in the day. So I spent that time working on this card game, and it took me about 3 to 5 months, and I averaged about 3 cards a day because I would hand draw all of these, I would upload them, and then I would trace over them, add some shaders, whatever, and then I would put them into the card template that I had made, and then I got to type out the abilities. And there was also a lot of forethought of when I started making the rules, and there are rules that I ended up making that I am now seeing in new card games, which I would talk about one day. That kind of made me upset because I thought it was a cool mechanic that I had made, but I guess there was another card game also in the works. It's whatever though, I'm not really tore up about it. I think making that card game really saved my life, and I'm not going to go into any more depth other than that. But what I ended up doing was doing a lot of play testing. I went and connected with other online trading card game makers. There was a dude that I play tested my game with. He was great. I ended up test printing a couple copies and got them. Made all of my stuff through Pixlr, which is like an online Photoshop kind of free. And I made about 100 cards in about 3 to 5 months and play tested them and felt like the game was done. And then I went to the merch stand where I was making a page for it that I'll link down below if y'all want to go look at it. And I'm pretty proud of it. I've released it since. I don't have all the cards, but I should order them, honestly. But I made 5 trial decks that anybody could pick up and play with, and I do have all 5 of those. And it became a good little game to play with me and my friends. My friends were pretty into it, which made me happy. They tend to identify with the game pretty well and wanted to play it, would call me and be like, can we come over and play? I want to try out this deck, stuff like that. And it was really cool. What does this card do? Oh, I want to play with this card. I still indulge in this world a whole lot. I'm currently working on a story. I still indulge in this world a whole lot. I'm working on a story, I'd say, because I'm too scared to say a book. I feel like that's too much commitment with some of the characters from this world. And it's something I really, really enjoy. I'm not sure if it'll hold the same name of Realms of Chaos, probably something different, but we'll see as time goes on. I appreciate y'all letting me yap about my history with trading card games and making one. So yeah, if you ever want to see it or anything like that, just let me know. Have a good night, guys.